hypothesis. Garbage.
Hello my Fireflies, and welcome back to the Science Firefly. It's me, Lyiat, and today I'm going to TLDR for you Nier Automata by developer Platinum Games. Now, since this game was made by Platinum, you have a good reason to believe that this game is actually really solid. They are, after all, the guys who made Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising. But then again, they did produce Legend of Korra, and that one kinda sunk. Nier Automata was released on March 7th for the PlayStation 4 and March 17th for the PC, so I have to say I'm a little bit behind the ball on this one, but since we're starting off the channel again, I figured I'd start off with a pretty kick-ass game, and Nier was great. So Nier Automata is a open-world hack-and-slash game with RPG elements. Yes, that's a lot to throw in a single game, but Nier blends it in such a way that just makes it work. You play as an android killing machine known as 2B. She's a badass with a personality to match. She takes no shit from anyone. Not to mention, this game actually has a plot that would make Hideo Kojima himself proud.
A weapon to surpass Metal Gear.
Now, when this game starts out, it actually seems pretty simple. You are a member of an android task force working for humans on the moon. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but it is straightforward. So you're an android tasked by the remaining humans on the moon to take back the Earth. You're deployed to take down what's called a Goliath-class enemy, which is just basically a really giant robot, and you're sent down to this facility, which, according to your intelligence, it is currently in this area. You hack and slash your way through this industrial complex, murdering everything that so much as twitches at you, and then you engage it in a giant bullet hell fight. But Lyiat, didn't you just say that this is a hack and slash game? Yeah, I did. It seems to swap genres every once in a while. Once you kill said giant nasty, the game opens up and gives you a whole open world to explore. You get to go through a giant desert, an epic-looking forest, a desolate city that nature is slowly reclaiming, an amusement park, all sorts of things. The environmental team did a killer job on this game. They really managed to make the world look like it had been abandoned by humans for years, possibly decades, maybe even centuries. It looks incredible. So I suppose this wouldn't really be a review unless I actually talked about the gameplay, now would it? So as I said, this is a hack-and-slash spectacle fighter type of game. The gameplay mostly composes of you running up to various packs of enemies, whipping out your blades, and then just carving them to bits. You have multiple different types of weapons, such as swords, greatswords, spears, and fist weapons. Each of these weapons all have a different move set, which allows you to do some really interesting things, and they can be set in either light attack or heavy attack slots. If, for example, you were to put a normal sword into your light slot, you would get a lot of really light, quick attacks with it. If you were to put it instead in a heavy slot, you would, of course, be swinging it more slowly, dealing more damage on each hit. However, what's interesting about Nier is that you actually equip weapons to your heavy and light attacks. So instead of equipping a normal sword and then getting heavy and light attacks with that, I equip a light sword in one slot, and I equip a great sword in the other slot. That allows me to swap between the weapons, which diversifies my moveset. Additionally, if you're doing a light combo, and then you, for example, use a heavy combo, 2B will grab both weapons and use a unique attack involving that pairing. For example, if she's wielding two great swords, she will pop up into the air and pummel the enemy with both swords at once. Every weapon combination actually has a unique form like that. The light sword and the great sword allow you to do a spinning attack that basically turns 2B into a pinwheel and murders anything in front of her. It's great. Additionally, you also have your pod, that little guy that's floating next to 2B. The pod has various weapons of his own. The pod can fire things such as rockets, lasers, and machine gun fire. Furthermore, the pod gets its own special ability, its own cool weapon that it can pull out to help enhance your attacks. For example, the one that you start off with is a really badass laser that just fires out and takes out all the enemies in front of you in a line. All the super attacks with the pods do take some time to recharge, however. Later down the line, you unlock some really cool stuff. My particular favorite one was this giant hammer that the pod can swing that'll just murder enemies and send them flying. It's pretty great, especially because then you have to run up to them and then you can toss them around a little bit more. Additionally, along with your starting pod, there are actually 2 pods that are hidden in the game. Once you find them, you actually unlock the additional weapon modes that I mentioned earlier, which are the rockets and the laser beam. As an added benefit, when you actually locate these other pods, you can utilize them in your special weapon attacks. When you hold down the special weapon button, the other pods will actually slowly appear above your head along with your main pod. Once you release it, all 3 pods will fire off at once using the same special attack, dealing extra damage or an increased effect. For example, if you're using the hammer, 3 hammers will then promptly crush your opponent. If you're using the gravity well, on the other hand, it'll just create a larger singularity which will pull all the enemies into a single point and deal more damage over time. Right off the bat, you also have the ability to swap between weapon sets. With a simple command, 2B can actually completely swap the weapons that she's carrying to a separate set that you set up in the menu. For example, if I'm currently using my favorite combination, my light sword and my great sword, I can immediately swap over to wielding 2 spears. Later on, as you unlock them, you can do the same thing with the pods. You can go from the machine gun pod to the rocket pod, and you can also have a unique weapon on that pod, such as the hammer or the big laser or the gravity well. All of this combines to a very diverse spectacle system that allows you to pull off some crazy combinations all in concert with one another. Something tells me if you got really good at this game, you would look amazing regardless of what you did. Hell, even players who are not so good, who end up getting hit a lot, end up looking really cool because of just how epic everything looks. It's also worth mentioning that 2B can dodge out of the way of harm, which does include invincibility frames. If you dodge at just the right moment, you get a very brief slowdown and a really impressive flourish where 2B splits into multiple ghosts that looks really cool. Did I mention that there's fishing in this game? There's fishing in this game. Oh my god, there's fishing in this game. There is a lot of fishing in this game. I'm not going to go too deep into the mechanics of fishing because it's actually a really simple, just timed press A minigame, but it's kind of important to actually go out and do because once you actually collect fish, you can sell them for the in-game currency, which allows you to buy more items, such as health recovery items or chips to slot into your pod to increase your power. There are also a number of hidden items that you can only get via fishing, so I suggest you do your due diligence and explore and throw a pole in the water. I believe I did mention that this game was part RPG, didn't I? You might notice that in some of these clips, you got an XP bar up in the corner. As you continue along in the game, 2B actually levels up and gets more powerful. While I haven't seen this have a very large impact on your actual stats, that seems to be more defined by the chip system, which I'm going to explain in a moment. It does seem to reduce the damage reduction of enemies that are higher level than you, putting you on a more even playing field with them. Additionally, there's an ability socketing system in the game. What this basically breaks down to is that you get items over the course of the game that you can slot into your pod. Each of these items have an effect, such as increasing your attack power, or giving your attack a shockwave, or increasing the slowdown that you get when you do a successful dodge. You get the option of setting 3 presets that you can swap in and swap out at will. Just remember that you actually have to go into the pause menu to swap between your ability sets. There's no real way to hot swap it in the middle of combat. That means you can't have this overpowered attack routine that you do and then immediately swap over to a super defensive ability set that's going to protect you from all harm. You get one or the other. Nier actually has a really interesting online mechanic that I haven't seen in too many games. The closest thing I would have to relate it to would be Dark Souls. Now, when your character dies, two things happen. The first thing that occurs is that all chips that you currently had equipped immediately drop to the ground. So yes, much like Dark Souls, if you die, you will then have to run across the battlefield, encountering all the same enemies that you encountered before, and make it back to your body before you die to actually get your strength back to where it was previously. The other side of this mechanic is that your corpse is actually recorded online. When you die, you actually leave a corpse on the ground in other people's worlds, a lot like the bloodstains in Dark Souls. Unlike Dark Souls, however, when somebody approaches this body, they get two different options. The first option is that they can retrieve the body, which allows them to convert your corpse into a brief power-up and some XP. The other more interesting mechanic is that they can actually repair your body, which will temporarily give them an ally to fight alongside them in combat. This ally will be wielding a weapon roughly in proportion to the weapon that you were wielding at the time that you died. One other cool little tidbit is that you can actually customize the death message that appears on your corpse when you die. It's something that really adds to the mystique to the world, and I really like how they implemented it. Lastly, there is actually a hacking minigame. I don't want to go into too many details about it because there are some major spoilers down the line that will really delight and surprise players, but at some point you unlock the ability to hack enemies and hack various things in the environment. This immediately drops you into a mini-game where you're basically doing a small little bullet hell segment. You have to dodge around, dodging the enemy bullets and enemy characters while you try to shoot the center black circle to end the simulation. Once you've done so, you have successfully hacked that thing, which can cause various amounts of effects, but I'd like you guys to figure it out on your own once you get there. There's also one particular enemy that I've encountered at this point in time that actually plays with that mechanic a little bit more. It was pretty horrifying the first time I ran into it because, boy, I was not expecting that. So you take all these awesome mechanics, you mix them together, and you form a really good backbone for Nier. However, that's not all this game has going for it. First of all, the plot is really great. There's a lot of shocking and surprising moments that'll just make your head spin as you try to wrap your brain around them. For example, there's one moment early on when you're exploring a desert and you encounter a pack of enemies. Now at this point, most of the robots that you've encountered have just been simple drones. They either attack you on sight or they just kind of mill around minding their own business. However, this particular robot sees you, screams "run away," and then takes off. From this point onward, you actually start looking at the robots with a more discerning eye and trying to judge their intelligence, and oh boy do they surprise you. Of course, this particular scene quickly develops into a mindfuck. Robots trying to replicate human behaviors, especially those specific kind of human behaviors, you'll have to see it to believe it. There are things in this plot that honestly made me cringe, and cringe in a good way. It made me uncomfortable. But it made me uncomfortable in the way that a good horror book would make you uncomfortable, or a really good sci-fi book that asked big questions would make you uncomfortable. A lot of the plot in the background actually has to deal with what is life, what is intelligence. In fact, there's one specific moment in the game that actually poses the question of Archimedes' ship, which I found really interesting. When does a thing stop being a thing once you start replacing its parts? When does it become a new thing? Granted, that's a gross oversimplification of the Archimedes ship, but you get the general idea. And this game's actually full of philosophical questions like that. In fact, one of the central concepts is a really well-known sci-fi story known as Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? But in this case, it's a little bit more of Can Robots Dream of Electric Sheep? Now, before I wrap things up here, I do have to warn you guys, this game does come shipped with Denuvo. Denuvo is a very, very hefty DRM that a lot of people have a lot of problems with. If you look it up online, you can find a lot of websites that actually warn against the dangers of Denuvo. Now, I don't think Platinum was being malicious here by including this particular type of DRM, I have to assume that this is something that the publisher, Square Enix, pushed through. But I can say that I personally have never run into any issues with de novo. That doesn't mean that the issues don't exist, but I'm just speaking from personal experience. So, in summary, Nier Automata is a solid spectacle fighter game with RPG elements that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think you guys will enjoy it too if you give it a chance. It's jam-packed with awesome action scenes, breathtaking environments, killer animations, and probably one of the craziest plots I've encountered in a long time. And it'll actually keep you playing for quite a while, because there are actually 26 different endings spread across 4 different plot branches. So my personal recommendation is, if you can get past the DRM problems, Nier is a total buy. And that's about all I have to say about this one, folks. This has been Lyiat talking about Nier Automata. I will catch you all next time.